Hello, third graders. This is Mrs. Oyster, and today I'm going to be reading to you Chapter 2 from your Unit 11 reader about ecology. And again, this chapter is probably in your ELA packet, so if you want to pause, grab your packet so that you can follow along with me, that might be helpful. All right, here we go. So, Chapter 2 is called Food Chains. And you will have three questions you're going to be answering about this chapter after you finish reading it. I will try to stop and focus on the answers to those questions as we read. So pay close attention. All right, starting with the first paragraph. Now you know something about squirrels and oak trees. Each has something to offer the other. The tree may produce thousands of acorns each year, but only a few will actually sprout and become saplings. Of those saplings, only a couple will survive and grow into mighty oaks, spreading their roots and changing with the seasons. The rest of the acorns will be eaten by one creature or another. Deer eat them sometimes, and so do various birds that wander through the forest, such as turkeys and woodpeckers. The acorns that aren't eaten will get covered by leaves, soaked by rain, and frozen by snow. If they aren't eaten by worms or other underground things, some of them will sprout into saplings. And on this picture, you can see a deer that might be eating an acorn. In the forest ecosystem, living things depend on one another. Many living things depend on trees for shelter and food. You can almost certainly find bugs on any tree. Woodpeckers can find them too. If you dig down into the soil or scrape away some tree bark, you will discover all sorts of other critters in the forest ecosystem, such as worms, beetles, and ants. You might not see all those insects and other little critters when you look around the forest, but they are there. You can find them under leaves, rocks, and fallen trees. Mostly, their world is underground and out of sight, unless you are willing to get dirty digging for them. This picture here is a picture of a beetle that lives in the forest ecosystem, and it looks like this beetle might actually be eating an acorn as well. What are all those bugs doing there? They are doing what all living things do, surviving. To survive, living things need food. The nutrients in food provide energy for the body. Without energy, the body stops. It's that simple. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment. I want you to understand that the reason why animals eat. So, to survive, all living things need food. And the reason they need food is that the nutrients in food provide energy for their bodies. And without energy, their bodies won't work. So food equals energy. Okay, I'm going to begin on the second paragraph. What else are bugs and other living things doing besides eating? They are doing whatever it is they need to do in order to produce young. Plants make seeds. Mammals, such as squirrels and deer, give birth to live babies. Bugs and birds lay eggs. Spiders make egg sacs like the one in this image. When the sac opens, hundreds of tiny baby spiders will run out. Most of them will be eaten by other bugs. Those that survive will grow to be hunters like their parents. Living things also must develop ways to protect themselves from other things in the ecosystem. Squirrels build their nests high in trees away from predators. Worms dig down into the soil. Snails and turtles have shells to protect them. Unfortunately for squirrels, worms, snails, and turtles, these defenses do not always work. The predators that hunt and eat other animals for a living have sharp teeth and claws for catching their prey. There are ecosystems in many places. Each ecosystem has its own food chain. I want you to listen carefully to what a food chain is. Look at the image of the wolf, the deer, and the acorn. This is a very simple way to think of a food chain. Smaller animals are eaten by slightly larger animals, but this image only represents a small part of a real food chain. Most food chains also include plants. They also include bacteria and other tiny microscopic organisms. Plants and smaller animals are usually near the bottom of a food chain. At the top of the food chain, you will find beasts like grizzly bears, lions, blue whales, or great white sharks. These animals are too big to be hunted by anything else. A lion or a shark is called an apex predator because it is at the top of the food chain. All right, that's the end of the chapter. And this is just a very brief overview of what a food chain is. You will learn a lot more about them in your domain read alouds. But I want you to look carefully on this picture or at this picture because one of the questions on your comprehension page has to do with this picture and asks you to describe a food chain. So this is a very simple food chain. At the bottom, you see some acorns. So the tree makes seeds in the form of acorns. Well, those acorns might get eaten by the deer. The deer eats the acorns in order to survive. Well, unfortunately, the deer might get eaten by a wolf. So the wolf is eating the deer in order to survive. That's a very simple example of a food chain. Something gets eaten by something, and then that something gets eaten by something else. And that's the circle of life. That's just the way energy gets passed on from living thing to living thing. All right, you will learn more about that later, but I hope you have the information you need to answer your questions, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.